Got a little ahead of myself there.
There we go. Hey, Keith.
Hey, how are
How
you?
you doing?
Real good.
Okay. There we go. We've got a cat problem now. So yeah. So this one cat of mine, Pluto, is really loud, and I've been trying to get him to shut up, and he won't. So we're going to interrupt this meeting. Hey.
I feel like my lighting is subpar compared to the rest of you.
Oh, that's not a cat.
Oh, but I did.
I think you, Martha, know Mike. We've been doing some things. But Fonda, Serena, Keith, and Dave, this is Mike. He's cadets 83 through 88, MJ?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he played tenors in the cadets from 83 to 88, and then he shared that season with us in 87. Met him out in New York. We clicked and started hanging and kind of came up with the idea to do this. It's good to see you guys again. It's nice. It's been a minute. Yeah.
Just a few, yeah.
I mean, I saw Serena and Fonda. We did alumni corps together, but I haven't seen Dave or Keith in 30-something years.
Yeah, long time.
Crazy.
What brought you to Santa Clara?
Yeah, when I started high school band, I had a band director, Mark Bacciarini. He ended up becoming a DCI judge, but he had showed me videotapes of finals. I'd never seen drum corps before, and on the tape I saw Vanguard, and I was like, that's it. That's my life goal. I have to try to get into that corps someday. And so I spent 2 years with a very small kind of feeder corps in the Central Valley, Valley Fever.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah.
I remember Valley Fever.
And finally got enough guts to try out. I remember the tryout, it was very difficult because I didn't even have my piece memorized. I played, and Ralph Hardiman was looking at his watch while I was playing. It was horrible. and then I would say the untold story is I wanted to be in Vanguard so bad. We had our first weekend camp, and I saw all the people. There's people flying in from all over the world, and just people, like Martha and everyone that was there. They just pick up sheet music that's black with notes, and they just sight read it and play it. And I finally broke. I was like, I'm not good enough, and I drove home. I ran away. And it was the most depressing drive of my life. And then I get a phone call, and it's Ralph. And Ralph goes,
Keith, man, where are you?
I said, Ralph, I can't handle this. I'm not good enough, man. I'm not good enough. He said,
Dude, you're good enough. You're in. Come back.
And that's how I started Vanguard.
That's
best
great.
day of my life. Worst day and best day of my life.
86 or 87?
87.
What about you, Fonda?
Well, I was in a small corps in Geneseo, Illinois, the Geneseo Knights, and I got involved in it because a lot of people in college at ISU were in Illinois State University were also involved in it, and they were doing Jesus Christ Superstar that year, so I was really pumped and really excited for it. And I thought that was going to be a rebuilding year for the Knights. I wanted to join. I was been watching SCV for years, and no other pit spoke to me the way that SCV did. And I just had this dream to learn from Ralph Hardman because he was the best. So I came out, and there were, like Keith said, it was really intimidating with all these people, and so many people looked so like, who are you? I'm better than you. So like when you get into an audition, how everyone's looking at each other, sizing each other up. So I got this treatment from him where he said, I don't know yet if you're in, come back out. So every month I'd come out, and he still wouldn't give me an answer. And then I get this call, there's some other corps that I could get you in. I got some connections with Skyriders, and they're a lot closer to you. They're in the Midwest. You want to be in Top 12 Corps, right? I said, I don't want to be in just any Top 12 Corps. I want to be in the Santa Clara Vanguard. He said, okay, you're in.
What about you, Serena?
Somewhere around 83, maybe. My friend showed me a DCI finals video on VHS, Vanguard and Blue Devils definitely stood out to me. I think, maybe from being from California. And I actually ended up in the Freelancers in 1985. The next season, they ended up folding kind of late in the season. And that kind of pushed me off the cliff of getting up the guts to contact Vanguard and say, hey, I want to march this year, and do you have a spot? And Ralph took pity on me and had me come out to a practice.
It was in May, I think.
Yeah, it was really late. Somebody dropped out of the battery that opened up a spot. Like, it was a huge line. I made it in, and like Martha or like Fondo was saying, I think, putting on that uniform for the first time, I couldn't believe it. It was, a dream come true.
Yeah.
Freelancers were hot in '85, man. That was a good core.
I loved that show. I think
that
it was very underrated and ahead of its time.
Okay, Dave, your turn.
In '83, I was the timpanist with Phantom Regiment. And
nice.
I forgot that.
Yeah,
that's great. That's a great show too.
But then '84, I wasn't going to march anywhere. I wasn't going back to Phantom Regiment. And a friend of mine talked me into going and marching Skyrider. So I was in the snare line with Skyriders in '84. But then I was going to Texas Tech University, and every fall our drum line put on a clinic for the local high school camps or drum lines and things. And Ralph, we always brought in a clinician, and we brought Ralph in that year as a clinician. And so I got to know him that weekend, and he heard me play and all of that. And he said, hey, make me a recording, send it in. And so I did, because I told myself, I'm either going to march Vanguard or I'm done with drum corps. That was the Cadillac of drum corps. Just from everything that I had seen in '83 and '84, just how they operated, how they treated their members, how just everything about them was just first class. And so I did, and there I was in '85. I marched in '85 in the front ensemble in the pit and had a great time. Well, I had marched '83, '84, '85. I needed a break, so I took '86 off. Came back in '87, but what a lot of people don't know or don't remember, I was the person in the front ensemble with a cast on my leg from my hip to my toes because I broke my leg spring break snow skiing. So Ralph was very gracious, and Gail and all the guys were very gracious to accommodate what I needed. And so I came out in '87, and it was just a fantastic summer. And it's something I'll always remember.
So, my story is that I started playing percussion. I started playing, drums in the 6th grade. And when I got to the 8th grade, my parents got me a private teacher, and she taught me mallets and timpani. And she was a student of Anthony Cerrone.
Ooh, that's
so
great.
I was very seriously training to be a concert percussionist. But my freshman year of high school, there was a guy on the drum line at my high school who really liked drum corps. And I didn't know what drum corps was. I'd never heard the word. But I kind of went to this ragtag drum line, and they would all make fun of him about drum corps. So I was like, well, I don't know what this drum corps is, but everybody says it's stupid. So, okay.
Do it.
Yeah. So then a couple more years went by, and my best friend was dating somebody who was in the San Jose Raiders. And he was like, will you go to a drum corps show with me? I'm like, oh, here's this drum corps thing. But we were really, really into high school marching band. This was the summer before my senior year. He was drum major, and I was going to be the drum line captain. And so I was like, yeah, I'll go check it out, because, it sounds like it's about marching band. So we went to the very first it wasn't even a competition. It was an evaluation show that they used to have in San Jose. And I saw Valley Fever and the Freelancers and Blue Devils and Vanguard and everybody. And I was just, my mind was blown. This was 1982.
Okay.
The 82 evaluation. So I saw the great 82 Blue Devils, Vanguard 82, one of the best shows ever. And I was just blown away. And I came home and I told my parents, I got to do this drum corps. I got to do drum corps. And since I was in a symphony orchestra, my parents were a little bit snobby about marching band. And they were like, yeah, that's nice. So they didn't really support my pursuit of it, but I really wanted to be in the Blue Devils. We had a guy teaching our marching band drumline that year who was a Vanguard alum, and he had marched 79 to 81. And he was like, why don't you listen to this cassette tape? and it was 81 finals. Blue Devils who? I was just completely converted by a cassette tape of 81. And that particular year, they mic'd the pit really, they over mic'd the pit, and you could hear the timpanist clearly every note. And I just worshipped that guy. His name was Greg Van Winkle. So I decided I was going to try out for the following year. And I used to drive over to Santa Clara because the Corps rehearsed on Sundays back then. And I would like Fonda be a stalker and hide behind bushes and like watch the 83 drum line. And one day I was sitting like really, really, really far away. And I don't know how he knew about me, but all of a sudden Ralph Hardiman starts walking towards me. You guys all know the Ralph walk. And I'm like sitting there by myself and I'm doing this. And there's nobody around but me. And he comes over and he sits down. He's all, "Hey, I hear you're interested in joining the line next year." And I was like, "Yes, Mr. Hardiman." And so he was like, "Yeah, well, come back in the fall and try out." And my audition experience was totally different than you guys. All I remember was there were two people trying out for the timpani spot, me and another guy named Mike Ryan. We'll never forget that name. Ralph basically brought us into one of the rooms. He had me do like some pedaling, some muffling, some crossovers, and then I went in the other room and Mike Ryan came in and he played, and that's literally all I remember. Never saw Mike Ryan again. I have no recollection of being told I was in. I was just, next thing I remember is being at the January camp.
Ralph was a big innovator with the pit. So let's go into that. Like, how many, like, I know that you guys switched around, but were you like brought on board because, you know, you play xylophone and you play timpani, and, or was it just like you guys have a set of skills and I'm keeping you in the group?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I was just kind of a generalist. You know, I did a variety of stuff from bass drum, concert bass and gong, and vibraphone and things like that.
I was brought in mainly as a mallet player, but I also expressed my interest in playing one piece on timpani, and I was interested particularly in learning from Ralph how to convert. I was an orchestral timpanist, so to convert indoor style to being able to play outdoor timpani style, which was completely different. You know, he taught me a lot that summer, and you know, I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to be able to play a piece on timpani. So it was everything I could have asked for, but mainly it was mallets and timpani.
Well, I auditioned on timpani and I was brought in on timpani, but Ralph knew that I studied with Cerrone, and so my rookie year, 84, he let me play a little bit of mallets. I played vibes and Musica Bohema, so I'm really proud of that I got to.
By the way, 84 drum solo, best ever. Great drum solo.
I'll make it real quick. To me, I was an all-around percussionist, and matter of fact, mallets was probably my weak point. You know, I had experience with timpani with Phantom Regiment and playing all the auxiliaries and all the percussive stuff, and so that's kind of mainly why I was brought in.
Did you play timpani on the drum solo?
I did on the Skika.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fonda, you played timpani on the ballad, right?
Yes.
That was a great part. That was a really nice part.
That part.
That was an awesome part.
It was it was such an honor to be playing timpani with, I had my work cut out for me because I'm, playing with the greatest timpanists who ever were in drum corps, in my opinion, at the time. So I had a lot to talk to.
And Ralph called your name on the recording. You can hear him go, "All right, Fonda." And you're like, "Ooh."
Yeah, we'll be talking
yeah.
about really cool.
Well, there's a video out there that actually I think Murray Gussick took of us somewhere, and it's like a 4 or 5 part video of us doing things like us practicing the Great Gate and all these things. And in one of those sections, the drum line the battery is blocked up coming over to engage with guard and do run throughs, and Ralph is there talking to you. Mm-hmm. You know the one I'm talking about? Yeah, and he's talking to you, and it doesn't seem like he's being nice. It seems like he has a thing or two to say. And so that being said, this is another thing. I feel like you were the me of the pit.
We were. That's what I noticed about you. I said, James is the snare line version of me.
Martha, you played pretty much everything else. I know there's the Fierce hut, where they're right on you at the beginning of the hut of Baba Yaga.
Dave and I started Russian Christmas music together. I played the sound plates.
You're back to back, right?
Yes, we were like butt to butt because I was playing the low drums and he had a unison part on the high drums, and then he would like hobble away, and I was always really afraid of knocking him over with his leg. And then I played timpani on Russian Christmas and Dance of the Buffoons, and then I went to xylophone and Dave came over, and you can see him on the video. He's like limping over. And then I played xylophone, and then I went to marimba for lullaby. And
there's something about that timpani chair in Santa Clara. You know what I mean? It's a pretty important position.
I went to college with a guy named Mike Wells who shared the timpani spot with Martha in '84, and he always gave me crap about it. He said, "Man, you got a lot to live up to." And I'm like, "Dude, I got to go."
As pit members, what were some of the challenges in terms of lining up your parts with the ensemble? Was that an issue, and how did you overcome that? What was some of the instruction that you received in order to make that happen?
Listening back, that's probably the biggest thing in the pit. In '87, I don't really recall us having a lot of ensemble problems because Les Ginka, the drum line, was right behind us.
Right.
And lullaby, the drum line didn't really play. Les Ginka was more about getting the mallet parts in sync. The mallet parts were unison, but they were really fast. So I just remember like Serena and me and Keith, and then it was Matt and Babs. We just practiced all the time. Just get our chops up, and once we had our chops up, we just all had to play it together.
There was the one phasing issue that we had. Remember that night when so the brass was facing back at one point in lullaby, and I was looking right at Tim Andrews, who is the main drum major, who is conducting in the front, and they were watching Ken Sarah, drum major, in the back. So there was a phasing issue. What show was that, Martha?
It was in Iowa.
And some of the brass players had been complaining and went up to me and told me that I caused a huge phasing issue that I didn't even realize was going on. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And Martha stepped in and defended me. And I was like, "Thank you so much." That, and I'm still to that day, I'm so appreciative that she did that. She stepped in and she said, she was right with Tim. She didn't do anything. And so I don't know what happened with the phasing issue, but I just remember being offended by being blamed for something that I didn't even do.
Yeah, I remember that. That's why I remember it was Iowa. I remember they were like so angry at you, and I'm like, Fonda was right on, bum, 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 and it was not you at all.
The phasing was not up front; it was to them in the back.
Yeah,
it was them facing back. They didn't get that concept that we listened back. They didn't listen forward. and so
Yeah.
you know, they had to learn how to do it, not us learning how to do it. We knew how to do it.
But when it comes to that kind of a thing where the horn line's way in the back and they're playing backfield, that's one of those, you know, somewhat rare instances where the pit has to watch the drum major, because listening back's not really going to work. So I think we had a handle on that, because all of us had, you know, been playing a while. We'd at least marched in Vanguard that year and other drum corps. So like I don't recall there being any issues with that in '87.
The biggest challenge we had was in '88. We had a lot of timing stuff. But I think just for me,
because it was so disjointed, the marching.
Being in my first top tier drum corps, it was just a master class for me in listening. You know, not just even short range of the battery right behind us, listening, and then listening to the horns.
You're right, Keith. There's a lot of things that I learned in Santa Clara musically and how to listen that I carry today in gigs and different listening situations. You know,
being right next to the drum major, the tendency is to want to be on his downbeat, but you can't. If you sort of have to watch the drum major for the general timing, but listen back to when the note is actually going to hit, which is slightly after the actual downbeat. It's funny because I think, you know, especially back in the 80s, a lot of orchestral players kind of look down at drum corps and, oh, you know, you just play fast and loud and, you know, there's no dynamics. And I had a completely opposite experience to that. Listening and, you know, really having to play as an ensemble, we really focused on dynamics and, you know, the feeling of the music. It was not just fast and loud. And
didn't Ralph used to call that playing on the back side of the beat or playing on the front side of the beat? And like, there's no way, it was just really instant.
Pocket.
Instant.
That's it. You know? That's the definition of pocket.
You know, as an orchestral player, and Martha and Fonda can probably agree to this, I think drum corps, playing a front ensemble drum corps, made me a better orchestral player.
Probably.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that came up earlier in the interview Chris, who also is in the pit in Barfield, said that he knew those areas in the show where the drum line was going to slow down or they were going to speed up. Did you guys have those instances in the show as well?
I remember the beginning of the show when the battery came out of the tunnel at the beginning of Russian Christmas music. I always knew that was a kind of a shaky spot that really we had to really.
How dare you, sir?
Well, I mean, to nobody's fault, but it's the way the drill was written, and it, you know, we always made it work. That was amazing to me, but man, that was a scary moment that could have gone haywire if we weren't very careful.
Yeah, right out the gate.
One part I do remember a back to front issue that, at least from the battery, and the drum line was way in the back, and then we were coming towards the front for drum solo. And I remember Ralph and Glenn and Alan were like, you guys, you got to push it. You got to stay on the top of the beat because you're so far back, and what these guys are playing and about to play, you just have to push it.
I thought of one other part that was actually really ensemble difficult between me and Dave and the drum line in Hut of Baba Yaga. It was at the end when there's nobody playing, but the horn line's going dun 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 dun. And Tiffany went digga 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 digga, and then you picked up immediately and went digga 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 boom.
On the toms.
Right.
Yes, and at finals, it's perfect at finals. Yeah. But that was a difficult one because it was like me to you to the drum line, and it had to just go and flow.
Not to mention, I was watching that on the video today, and the core is in this huge circle.
Yeah,
smiley face.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember, like, how did you learn the book? What part did Ralph put in that? I just seem to remember him giving overall views and then Alan coming in and teching stuff. But I don't know how he did it with the pit. Was he there saying with interpretation and all that stuff? How did that happen?
I don't remember.
I do remember just him giving some specific, especially interpretation things. It was up to us to learn the notes and all of that and use our musicianship. But he gave a certain interpretation to
Right.
how he wanted it to sound, dynamically, phrasing wise, and so forth. And that's what I remember learning from him, was to take it beyond the notes, to really focus on the interpretation and the musicality of it.
Right. And groove, like I always remember groove and it having a good feel.
As I was learning my parts, and I saw Ralph do it with the rest of the group, was he'd come individually to each of us to, I know for me, to help me learn how to emote out what he had intended. And then part of that, I think, would come during our ensemble practices too. He would kind of guide us.
First, I'd have to figure out which drums to play which notes on and when to pedal, and should I pedal this or should I play it on a different drum? And then, then it was like learning the music.
I think one of the things that I remember about learning things is kind of learning from the senior members in the pit, and really, like, there was just this incredible, I don't even know how to explain it, but thread of greatness that gets passed from year to year, from season to season, from generation to generation. That's, I remember, looking up to the people in the pit that were there before me. Just the cohesiveness and that passing of the tradition.
What about you, Fonda? I know Ralph was probably a little harder on you.
He was on me a lot, which the firmer that he was with me was the more that he was pushing me into my potential, I think. I wasn't quite living up to I was better than some of the things that I was doing at the beginning, because I wasn't quite sure what he was looking for and how I could achieve certain phrasings and stuff like that. Like even something as little as in Dance of the Tumblers with these tom runs that I had. I was going back and forth from xylophone to, I had a couple of runs on the concert tom. So he wanted it phrased a certain way, and every little nuance was pronounced a certain way with Ralph. And it was the way in which I was achieving the phrasing and learning from how, he was just very precise with every little note that you played, or every little, okay, this note you need a little more lift with your with your arm here. So that's what you were seeing in that video where from the parking lot where he was working with me, and you saw he was like lifting his arm in certain spots and everything, showing me, I want you to bring this note out more. Certain things he was looking for, but it was that glissando at the end. That was
glissando, yeah.
Okay, so at the end of a lullaby, so it's kind of like a little, so we're kind of ending where it's slowing down at the end, like chromatically. So getting from the high E to the low E at the end and nailing it right precisely on that,
that last thing.
Yeah, that very last one. And so that was what was hard. Every time that I got there, I was like, oh, Ralph's going to kill me. And I kept screwing it up because I had that in the back of my mind.
And Martha, Chris has talked about weather and timpani playing. Sometimes the humidity changes the tonality of the heads.
Weather and timpani is like the bane of your existence in drum corps. So yeah, if it got really cold at night, the drums would go flat. If it got really hot, they would go sharp. And then you're trying to tune, like if you if your drums are going flat and you're trying to make sure your notes are in tune, and then the horns go out of tune too because of the weather, it's really frustrating. So I would just, I mean, I have a pretty good ear, but, and I'm, you know, I could tell if they were out of tune, but it just makes it harder, especially if your drums only go up to, you know, drums only go up to a certain note. Let's say you need to, at some point in the show, you need to hit the highest note on a drum, but then the drum goes flat. That note's going to go flat. So I just had to really listen and be careful, because yes, Andy is correct. Weather messes with timpani.
Yeah, and it messes with all of the pit equipment, like all the mallet
marimbas.
Yeah, and you can't retune a vibraphone.
Yeah, you can't.
It's flat. It's flat.
Wow.
The thing with timpani that was so hard, it tended to go with the horns, and the mallet instruments would go the other direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So which do you tune to? Which do you go with? And that made it real difficult.
And I don't know if you guys remember, but we had a couple different sets of keys for marimbas and vibes that were like, we had an A440, and we had an A442, and we had an A444. And Ralph would be like, and I don't remember which ones were which, but Ralph would, like, if we had a day show, he'd be like, put on the 442s.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Secret.
It's
Crazy.
also why the pit had to practice in the shade.
Yeah, right.
And lifting all those keys, we had to nap a lot. You know, we were very exhausted.
Brother. But the pit were masters at finding shade and finding the place that had the most Slurpee or Big Gulp offerings. Yeah. This place has like 6 different Slurpee flavors. And we come back and you guys would have like these huge things just sucking on your Slurpees in the shade.
That's an art, man. I'm telling you.
But here's the funny thing is, when I brought that up to the cadets pit earlier today, they said, "Oh no, it's not Slurpees, it's Dairy Queen." So I guess their thing was Dairy Shade and Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
You know what? I got to go with Garfield on this. Dairy Queen rules, and you can't really get them around here, at least.
And now, the decision of the judges.
Camp Randall was an amazing venue for this. It was the one year I marched finals, and it was just wall to wall people.
What were your thoughts on the results of '87?
It was heartbreaking, because you go undefeated the whole year, and then all of a sudden everything comes crashing down. You know, for a young guy like me who was new to it all, it was pretty tough. I was young, dumb, not experienced in the world. Now in hindsight, I look back and I believe the results are absolutely correct. I wish they weren't. It was clear that we kind of peaked, and we were kind of scrambling to recover. Garfield was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Blew my mind.
All 4 years I marched in drum corps, Garfield won every year. So I had a real love-hate relationship with Garfield. I loved their music, but man, I hated losing to them, especially in '87.
There are certain shows, at least in the '90s and the '80s and the '70s, that changed the momentum, or they changed the direction.
I was shaking when they were saying, and in second place.
With a score of 97.
And I was shaking because the night before we got second place in semis. You know how you have kind of a gut feeling about something? So I sort of had a gut feeling that was going to be us.
That ruined it for me. The competition side of it, I just can't handle it anymore. I really got mad. It took a long time for me to get over that. I don't go to many drum corps shows anymore. And but what's ironic is, years later, George Hopkins came and clinicked my high school marching band when I was teaching down in the Austin area. I was talking to him afterwards. I said, yeah. I said, you remember 1987? And he said, yeah. And I said, I was in Vanguard. And he just kind of said, oh, I'm sorry. And he agreed with me. He said, you know, it's a shame you have to put a number on shows like that, because how do you compare that? How do you do it? Both groups were just incredible.
If we were going to lose, and get second place, losing by a tenth of a point was what was really the hurtful thing about it. It was such a painful experience that it just had stayed with me my whole life. Anything like that would have happened back, say, in 2008, they would have tied both tours. Because how can you compare? They were such different shows. You can't say one was greater than the other, and say one was just that slight little tiny bit better.
I felt Vanguard was the better drumline, only because for me, they had a better clarity of sound. Again, to the tuning that Garfield had, I thought that there was a lot of stuff that was the notes were thicker. Not to say that they weren't playing incredible things. I just feel like clarity of sound for me went to Vanguard.
I feel that was the best book Ralph has ever written.
And then we found out Garfield got a perfect 20 in drums with Blue Devils going on after 30. Them. And then the judges came out to shake our hands. And then we started losing it. Because I'm like, I'm not playing to those guys. It was ugly.
Things were moving. And, it wasn't about the micro of what's this drum line doing.
Right.
It just wasn't all about that.
I would have rather finished 9th place than 2nd place. Second place, you start questioning, like, man, should we have taken that free day in New York? Should we have worked on the ballad that day? Or, you start questioning, like, are there things that I could have done that I didn't do to get that 10th of a point? And then part B, the horns did their part. The horns won their caption. So they did their part, and we lost by half a point, and the core only lost by a 10th of a point. So it kind of falls, was it the battery? Like, is it, my head broke before the show and I was using a new drum. It was hot out, whatever the excuses, you start questioning yourself. So I would have rather finished 9th place or 11th place. In 11th place, you knew you weren't going to win. But 2nd place,
And then I remember the announcer saying, the sack, and that's all I remember hearing. It was like everything just went, having absolutely nothing to do with Garfield not deserving it, but more, wait a minute, I know the show we put on. I don't remember hearing anything after that. It was like I went deaf. But in hindsight, it was such a gift. The reason I say that is what I learned is when you have the performance of a lifetime, you know it. You don't need a score. You don't need a ring. You don't need people, giving you accolades. In here, I performed the best. We performed the best. It was an amazing show. I didn't need a first place.
I wish I wouldn't have spent so many years feeling bitter about it, because honestly, who even cares? I sort of almost feel like Keith does at this point. Like, that Appalachian Spring show was so groundbreaking and we didn't realize it in the moment. My only regret from '87 has nothing to do with the finals result. It's that I never really got to know people in Garfield until recently because of social media. I wish Garfield could have been like Blue Devils were to us. We had a lot of friends in Blue Devils because we saw them all the time. And I wish I had that with Garfield. That's my one regret from '87.
I was bitter. It took me a while to get over it. I think probably a lot of us grew up a little bit from that. It was tough. It was tough, but I have carried that through many, many things that happened after. Of really being grounded in who you are and what you're doing, and not letting somebody else's opinion of what you did.
After 30, the most talked about.